Nigeria has an Igbo problem, and it is important that we address this. How did the Igbos move from being persons desirous of a unitary system at the peak of his hegemony to demanding separate homelands today? It's simple. The loss of citizenship, the absence of the rule of law. If impunity does not govern the country,
do not allow P2B to campaign in any state. That's the instruction coming from Abuja.
I am today convinced that Nnamdi Kanu was 110% correct in his assessment of the Nigerian state. What ails it? He was correct, but today he sat in a cell somewhere, and numerous murderers are walking around free. That is vindication. The man is correct.
You see, madness. I always tell people madness. Nobody have monopoly of madness. Nobody. I guess some people will arrange their own, keep them by the side, say, I don't want to be seen as such.
All right, viewers, I want to bring this video and I want to stress on it because many of us don't really know what happened in this video. But I want you to watch it and see what happened in this video and listen to wisdom. Because many of us, we overlook some certain things that will give us information that we required. In this video, you will see Dele Farotimi. In fact, the man finished work. You will be wondering if this person he is talking about, whether the person is maybe one of the aides to the president or one of the ministers. You will know that the person is inside prison. Now, Nigeria, the government jailed him. And actually, government, like Fela said, who be government teacher, who is teaching government what to do? It should be culture and tradition. Who be government teacher, culture and tradition. But in Nigeria, government, they do on their own. I don't know any connection that, connect them with the masses. Sometimes as if Tinubu is on revenge. The kind of policy, the things that are happening in Nigeria as if he's on revenge. Probably he saw what happened during 2023 election and he's revenging it. Having, been on the seat, he said, okay, I'm going to deal with these people. He's firing everybody left or right. But however, watch this video coming from Dele Farotimi. In fact, that man, he opened up everything. He did not hide anything. He talked about Nnamdi Kanu, how Nnamdi Kanu is 110% correct in everything he has said. I said, I don't play with Nnamdi Kanu's video now. If I see them, I watch. He stressed on Igbos, how Nigerians are treating the Igbos. And in fact, let me not.
And speaking of correct or not correct, Nigeria has proven Nnamdi Kanu right at every point. We start here today. I'm speaking Dogon French. I have no single argument against, not one single argument against the facts that have been adduced by Nnamdi Kanu in his agitation against the Nigerian state. Not one. And if you press a little further, I am today convinced that Nnamdi Kanu was 110% correct in his assessment of the Nigerian state. What ails it? He was correct, but today he sat in a cell somewhere, and numerous murderers are walking around free. That is vindication. The man is correct. Nigeria has an Igbo problem, and it is important that we address this. How did the Igbos move from being persons desirous of a unitary system at the peak of his hegemony to demanding separate homelands today? It's simple. The loss of citizenship, the absence of the rule of law. If impunity does not govern the country, there will be citizens. If the Igbo are citizens in Nigeria, they will not desire a separate homeland. If the Igbos are citizens of Nigeria, I would also be a citizen of Nigeria. The Igbo problem in Nigeria is the absence of citizenship. Restore citizenship to the Nigerian. Igbo will not be demanding to go anywhere. Restore citizenship to Nigeria. The people of the Middle Belt will not be crying about Fulani headsmen. Restore citizenship to Nigeria. The Hausa nation will not have Maishango locked up in prison simply because he asserted Hausa nationality. We've become a society that is largely anti-truth and very hostile to opinions that diverge from our own. And many times, when an Igbo person speaks to a Yoruba issue, as the Osun election had been turned, you have Yoruba persons telling them, that's what of now, is it your state? It's almost as though what ails one does not ail the other. We've become that society where telling the truth has become a constant offense. But these offenses are also necessary. If we are going to ever come out of our mess, we're going to have to be deliberate about telling ourselves the uncomfortable truth. So in tiptoeing around, I'll be stepping on toes. Yeah. I'll mash on some toes, sometimes deliberately and sometimes because it cannot be avoided. The truth is not always palatable. And it is the Jamaicans who have a proverb that Bob Marley turned into a song. The truth is an offense, but it is not a sin. So you bear with me this morning, be open-minded enough to know that I'm an equal opportunity offender. I didn't set out to tell any lie, and I've made sure that where I'm not 100% certain, I've held back from drawing conclusions, and I'll leave it to you to make your own findings and then decide whether the truth has been told to you as we take around today. In the land of the Igbo, when a man stands up in the community to speak, he says, I think he called Mwala, says, Igbo Kwenu, Igbo Kwenu, Igbo Kwenu. It's a request to speak. It is not a salutation. You answer, Kwezono, go ahead and speak. You've given permission. As God would have it, I've muted your comments. So I do not even know whether you have given permission or not. But this morning, we must tell ourselves the truth. And I come as a friend, as I am to each and every one of us, because this is about all of us. So this morning, I say Igbo Kwenu. Now, Igbos will say Igbo Enweze. Igbo Enweze. Igbos do not make king. This is the character, or was the character of Igbo before the British came. In describing Igbo society pre-colonial times, all anthropologists have agreed that the Igbos were acephalos, which simply means they didn't have a head. This might not be completely correct when you begin to look at the history of the Arab Confederacy and the influence of the Nri Kingdom as it relates to the governance of, let me say, the spiritual governance of Allah Igbo. But the truth really is that when it came to political leadership, Igbos were largely independent, or at best confederal in nature. But then the British came, as they came to everywhere else in Nigeria, and they happened to Igbos. And when the British came, it wasn't a pleasant, quick transition for Igbo, because the absence of centralized authority meant that you couldn't defeat a single ruler and then bring every other person under subjugation. You had multiple systems where individual villages and clans were completely independent of any centralized authority. So the British had to engage in multiple wars before they could pacify what we call Allah Igbo. You have the Anglo-Arab Wars, which started in 1901 and lasted into 1902. You had the prolonged guerrilla wars that is generally known as the Ekumeku movement, which was largely centered around Anioma and Neocha axis. That's the Igbos closer to the riverine areas. Eventually, after pacification, the British were left with a conundrum. What was this conundrum? Their preferred method of rulership or of administration is indirect rule. Now, they are confronted with an acephalous society that had no distinct political headship, no royal houses. Persons rose on account of individual bravery and character. So what did the British do? What they always did wherever they went and caused their trouble. They created warrant chiefs. Igbos will refer to these people as Nwadianas, outsiders. They will bring somebody from outside the clan. Maybe an Enugu man will be brought to Onitsha. Maybe an Osu person will be brought into the same community. Just suffice to say that the people unused to centralized authority had this forced on them. Over time, it snowballed. And this crisis is what you generally refer to as the Aba Women Riot. That riot led to the end. Over 50 women were killed, by the way. But the indomitable spirit of the Igbo women and the ethic of the women who were involved ensured that that was the last that was ever heard of the warrant chief system. It was stopped forthwith in 1929, I believe. And as it ended, it coincided with a period when Igbo had started embracing the reality of colonial administration. And they took maximum advantage. Western education was rapidly embraced. Town unions began to rapidly build schools. The entrepreneurial spirit of the Igbo didn't happen yesterday. It was always there. They began to travel far and wide with the colonial administration, became embedded in the administration as the earliest people to embrace Western education in numbers, very large numbers. Christianity and Western education found home in Allah Igbo. And rapidly, just as the railways were extending, Igbo people were moving across the commercial belt of Nigeria. I believe the first riot against Igbo was in Jos around 1946 or thereabouts. This tells you how far back Igbo had been engendering the kind of hostility that you see today. But that's another story. We'll come there. The point I'm trying to make by explaining all of this is to explain that the first Nigerian hegemony was found in the Igbo. It wasn't the Fulanis. The first hegemony in Nigeria was the Igbo hegemony. And it is important to talk about this because it provides a backdrop and context for some of the problems that we are still faced with today. I believe it was in 1945 or thereabouts that Justice Dade Onyema, who was representing Enugu in the Legislative Council in Lagos, delivered a speech. And he said in that speech, the domination of Nigeria and Africa by the Igbo is only a matter of time. Let me quote him again. Quote, the domination of Nigeria and Africa by the Igbo is only a matter of time. When he delivered this address, remember, Igbos were at the peak of their powers in Nigeria, almost there, but definitely the preeminent hegemon outside of the British themselves when it comes to the workings of Nigeria. The upper echelon of the military that was emerging, the civil service, as it were, in the colonial administration, most of the engineers in the railway service, the court clerk system, they were firmly entrenched politically and economically. And people like that, they were not very subtle. They are not like today's brash young men who continue to attract envy and enmity. I don't hear my had to say. And as soon as he had to say, obviously, this catalyzed reactions across the length and breadth of Nigeria. It is fashionable to talk about the reactions that took place in the Southwest, or shall I say the West as it was known. But do not forget that these reactions went beyond the West. It catalyzed the formation of the Nigerian and of the Northern People's Congress. It catalyzed the birth of town unions and ethnic nation groups across the southern, particularly in the eastern part of Nigeria, where people were already worried about Igbo domination of the affairs of the East. But it didn't end there. The foremost Nigerian nationalist of Igbo origin, of any origin, but incidentally was of Igbo origin, was also most undiplomatic in his speech. Dr. Nnamdi Kanu was delivering a speech in Aba, I believe that was in 1949, at the Igbo State Union. And he spoke of the manifest destiny of the Igbo people to lead Africa. He wasn't speaking as an ethnic bigot, no. Zik was bigger than that. Zik was actually speaking as an African, as a Pan-Africanist, but he played into the hands of the colonial masters and into the hands of his political opponents, who took what he said in tandem with what the likes of Dade Onyema had said, declaring the preeminence of Igbo in a state like Nigeria with its plurality and everything. It stoked fear even as much as it stoked hatred. What happened thereafter is that what had been a nationalist approach to independence quickly dissolved into ethnic bickering and reactions. The birth of Egbe Omo-Oduah may not be directly traceable to what either of these Igbo gentlemen had to say, but it certainly helped that in that season, the need to look at the interest of ethnic nations became important. Egbe Omo-Oduah was battered, and not long after, remember that in Egbe Omo-Oduah, you had persons who are in NCNC, and when Egbe Omo-Oduah, and when AG was battered, most of those persons remained in the NCNC. So Egbe Omo-Oduah was battered as a Yoruba nationalist group. It wasn't a political group. It was for Yoruba interest, not advocating for any party. Adeniro Ogunsoya, the likes of Tos Benson, and quite a number of others who were members of Egbe were not members of the action group. Akinloye. So the important thing to note is that in that season, the hegemony that had Nigeria was the Igbo hegemony. Now, hegemonies, what are hegemonies? I think it's important to explain this so that we don't get lost in definitions. Hegemonies just generally speak to influences, persons or groups that influence to shape the trajectory or direction of an entity. The Igbo hegemony during the colonial era was unsurpassable. It was inclusive at the beginning because the NCNC went beyond Nigeria. He extended into Cameroon. And definitely, Azikiwe was never about sectional interest. He had bigger fish to fry. But unfortunately, the events of 1953, which was the break of the removal of Eyoita and the return of Azikiwe as the premier in the eastern region, following his inability to take over the governance of the western region. Another story another controversy I don't want to be derailed by this morning. The important thing is that the hegemony became fractured. From being national in outlook, it became sectional in outlook. Whether in reality this was the case or whether it was by colonial design and by the blackmail of the opposition to seek is not important anymore. The most important thing is that we moved from a nationalist approach to the independence agitation to an ethnic-based approach. And it also began the trend of ethnic politics in Nigeria. I'm not blaming this on anyone. I'm explaining the root. That's why we talk about tiptoeing. It was after the removal of Professor Ayoita. Remember that crisis actually has its root in the undesirability of the Macpherson Constitution as far as Azikwe and most of the NCNC was concerned. But what it succeeded in doing was that the politics deepened the crisis within the eastern region, where the ethnic minorities felt themselves dominated and marginalized by the Igbo majority. This began the agitation for the Calabar or Goja River State. It was also one of the catalysts for the Willings Commission on the right of the minority. These were all going on when the Civil War was catalyzed by the first and then the second coup. I am saving us time because my focus is to look at how each one of our regions have shaped the trajectory of the Nigerian state. And now we are all commonly guilty, and it will take all of us acting as one to save all of us if we are going to ever be saved. By the time of the Civil War, Igbo was the preeminent hegemon in the Nigerian space. It was cosmopolitan in outlook, spread across the length and breadth of Nigeria doing its business. When the coup came, and most of those who died in the coup were of northern origin, it was very easy to demonize the coup and to label it an Igbo coup. And by the time the reactions began with the pogroms, the Igbo, of course, bore disproportionate cost of the war, theater being in Igbo land. One of the first things that Gowon did, even before the outbreak of the war, was to break the structure of the Nigerian state. I'm sure you've heard it told multiple times that it was Ironsi who turned Nigeria into a unitary state. What is often ignored is the fact that the military structure is not amenable to federalism. It was always going to follow the command structure, which is generally unitary. But when Gowon took over, one of the first things he did was to break Nigeria into 12 states. In breaking Nigeria into 12 states, he was also seeking to decouple the southern minorities from Igbo so that they are not going to be part of Biafra. He was playing up ethnic differences. So he pandered to southern ethnic minority interest in creating what became known as, we were talking about the Calabar or Goja River State. These were achieved. You had River State. I believe three states were created out of the southern minorities. You had 3 created for the Middle Belt as well. But the critical thing was that Igbos were decoupled, and it became fashionable for a lot of Igbo ethnic groups who were caught outside the main body of Igbo land, like Anyocha, Ikwere, Igbo persons who are largely in what is today River State, began to deny Igbo ethnicity in the politics of post-war Nigeria, where to be Igbo means to be marginalized systematically. It then meant that people in Anyoma, who were largely murdered because of their Igbo identity by the likes of Muritala Muhammad, became resistant to being labeled Igbo and started calling themselves Delta Igbo. You now found multiple contradictions. This is important because when a people begin to have identity crises, you then begin to have multiple perversions becoming mainstream. Today, the Ikwere people, whose names, languages, culture is clearly Igbo, will deny what they are because Nigeria has engendered a situation where to be Igbo is to be disadvantaged. Of course, we had the lies. No victor, no vanquished. Or is this true? The truth is that this is anything but. Igbos will point to the 20-pound policy and say that, oh, when we came out of the Civil War, regardless of what we had, all we got were 20 pounds. Awolowo was largely blamed for this. He was the economic minister. They will speak to the kwashokorization of Igbo children and talk about how all is fair in war, quote and unquote, and point to the weaponization of hunger. There are multiple responses to these things, but it's not my place to offer them this morning. But the only thing I want all of us to do is to keep in mind, is all indeed fair in war? The explanation that has been offered multiple times are this. Bank records have been destroyed, banks have been looted, but if you could prove that you had this money and the bank was not in the war zones, you could have access to your money. So the Igbo upper class were largely unaffected because they were largely dwelling in Lagos and the like. Ekweme got his money. No victor, no vanquished. But you began to have abandoned property syndrome. In Port Harcourt, Igbo properties were expropriated. Persons who had had long-held grievances against the domination of the Igbos acted vengefully, appropriated Igbo properties. In most parts of Nigeria, outside of the South, this didn't happen. I'm not suggesting that it didn't happen in some places that Igbo properties were expropriated, but I am not sure I've heard of it outside of the South. But these things happened, and it continued to birth a lot of resentment within Nigeria. So it's a lie to say that there was no victor, no vanquish. Igbos were certainly vanquished, and they were not allowed to forget about it. For years, Igbos were not deemed fit to serve in the upper echelon of either the police or the army, or any of the armed forces for that matter. For years, structurally marginalized to the point where it is only the eastern region or the land of the Igbos that is left with only 5 states. Others have become 6, 7. The number of local governments have not been increased, and yet these local governments have become the center for sharing revenue. Land space was not a factor in revenue allocation prior to the restructuring of Nigeria since after the Civil War. Today, it is the basis for revenue allocation, and you can be sure that the region with the least number of local governments is the Southeast. The land of Igbos have the least number of local governments, so systematically and structurally, they are marginalized even in revenue allocation. You have a situation today where, whether we want to accept it or not, Igbos are deliberately excluded even from the presidency. In the years of Abacha or post-Abacha, Nigerians evolved a novel power-sharing arrangement. They call it zoning. Power has been zoned to the south and to the west and to the north. The north has taken power and it's gone round. In 2023, it came back to the south, and by any rational deduction, should have gone to the Igbo. Igbo presented a very, very good candidate. We know the story of what happened in that election. It is almost impossible to argue against the fact of Igbo exclusion when you listen to the rhetoric issuing forth from certain persons in the northern part of Nigeria and from Yoruba land. The reality is that the marginalization of Igbo is structured not necessarily because the Igbos have been excluded from power per se, but because Nigeria continues to suffer from a problem that I will speak to when I'm coming to the conclusion of this lecture. Nigeria has an Igbo problem. Keep that in mind. We'll get there. But Nigeria has excluded Igbo. You also find that the land of the Igbos have become militarized. I have traveled extensively in Igbo land. As a young lawyer, I used to be the one that would handle the cases for my law offices in the eastern part of Nigeria. It used to be that the youngest lawyer in the law office would do the grunt work. So I used to be the one that would go to the east to handle cases for my office. And I traveled there. But more importantly, in recent times, I've had occasion to visit the east. I was a guest of the NBA Oka this year to deliver a lecture at their law week. And I traveled to Enugu from Oka. And one of the things I saw very quickly was the acute militarization of the space. Multiple military checkpoints everywhere, and a culture of the people learning to fear the security operatives, from the drivers to the people who are casually walking by, having to raise their hands even as they walk by. The systematic dehumanization and the citizens, I don't even know what to call it. When you remove, we'll get there. The important thing is that the Igbo person in his own land is not treated with dignity, with respect, or with the protection due to a citizen under the law. But one of the things that has been battered by all of this is the resilience of Igbo. I was speaking with a friend sometime after the last election, the 2023 election. And he said to me, if I like, shut us out of government. When you thief all the money finish, you bring it to the market and we'll be waiting for you. You want to buy food, Igbo is waiting. You want to buy building material, Igbo is waiting in the market for you. You want to buy anything you are buying in Nigeria, from electronics to building material to cars, anything, food, Igbo is waiting for you. This was the message he passed to me. And this is a message against which you can have no argument. Excluded from opportunities within the governance system, Igbo has built viable alternatives, created wealth, immense wealth, amongst his young men and women. The spirit of exclusion has battered the spirit of independence. And that resilience has assured that Nigeria has built a people whom we may not like hearing as being destined for leadership, Padadi, Oyama, and Azikwe, but whom history will suggest offers lessons to those who will learn. Because what I see when I look at the resilience of Igbo is the same resilience I see that we call the Nigerian spirit, the refusal to give up. But in the midst of all of these, we must also speak to what now grew in Igbo land. And that's the rise of grievance politics. Instead of engaging Nigeria and its many issues with some measure of optimism and vision, what has happened is that there has been a rise in grievance politics in the land of the Igbos. You find persons who have traded on the genuine grievances of the people to gain offices, national offices, gubernatorial offices, but who have gone on to even be worse and more ruinous for the interest of the Igbos than the enemies of the Igbos who are outside of Igbo land. No Fulani man has ruled in Igbo land in the last 27 years. No Yoruba man has ruled Igbo land in that time. You've not had any Bachama ruling in Igbo land. No Hausa man has ruled Igbo land. Every ruler of Ala Igbo has been sons and daughters of Ala Igbo. Or outside of the exceptions, such as Peter Obi and today Uche, who are the persons that you may speak with, has been exceptional in the governance of Igbo. You've had Oji Uzokalu, you've had Rocha Zokorocha, you've had numerous Igbo sons and daughters who have spoken in the name of Igbo and only feathered their own nest while playing up the grievances which they never bothered to address. They speak to the marginalization of Igbo, and these marginalizations are real, but they speak of them only in terms of demanding that they too be settled, never in the interest of the whole. And in the midst of all of this, you find the rise of the separatist voices. And let me explain something. Nigeria encourages madness. If it will not listen to rational voices, it became inevitable that more extreme voices will be spoken in the language that Nigeria understands. And of course, you've seen the rise of the Umezuruke of this world and the multiple persons who had traded on the grievances of Igbo to build separatist movements demanding separation from Nigeria. I've had multiple occasions to address separatist agitators, both in Igbo land, in Yoruba land, and elsewhere. There are reasons why separatist noises have not found ventilation or action in Nigeria. And this is because outside of the state and the multiple evils that the state has mollycoddled, the only other persons who have sought to keep dialogues and violence have been counter-revolutionary groups such as Boko Haram and the rest. Now, if you, who have genuine grievances, now believe that you can use violence to achieve the goal, what you do is that you play into the hand of the system, which then delegitimizes your genuine grievances on account of the medium of expression. Let me be clear. Everything the oppressed does in pursuit of freedom will find no condemnation from me, including violence. But I may not support it because I do not believe that it would achieve the goal. That is not me condemning it. So what you have found in this time is that in Igbo land, you've had persons trading off the grievance of the people to gain offices, to gain political patronage, to make money. And then you've also had persons who have genuine grievances, are not interested in trading off it, demand changes, but embraced the wrong methodologies in my own view. I may not be correct. And speaking of correct or not correct, Nigeria has proven Nnamdi Kanu right at every point. We start here today. I'm speaking Dogon Turenchi. I have no single argument against, not one single argument against the facts that have been adduced by Nnamdi Kanu in his agitation against the Nigerian state. Not one. And if you press a little further, I am today convinced that Nnamdi Kanu was 110% correct in his assessment of the Nigerian state, what ails it. He was correct. But today, he sat in a cell somewhere, and numerous murderers are walking around free. That is vindication. The man is correct. Nigeria has an Igbo problem, and it is important that we address this. How did the Igbos move from being persons desirous of a unitary system at the peak of his hegemony to demanding separate homelands today? It's simple. The loss of citizenship, the absence of the rule of law. If impunity does not govern the country, there will be citizens. If the Igbo are citizens in Nigeria, they will not desire a separate homeland. If the Igbos are citizens of Nigeria, I would also be a citizen of Nigeria. The Igbo problem in Nigeria is the absence of citizenship. Restore citizenship to the Nigerian, the Igbo will not be demanding to go anywhere. Restore citizenship to Nigeria, the people of the Middle Belt will not be crying about Fulani headsmen. Restore citizenship to Nigeria, the Hausa nation will not have Maishango locked up in prison simply because he asserted Hausa nationality. My request that we stroll around Nigeria, in some cases tiptoe around Nigeria, is not to peel our scabs, is to go to the historical roots of our problems, to see that the problems that have historical roots can only be cured by telling ourselves the hard truth. And if we shall confront this truth, we will find salvation for ourselves. Nigeria has an Igbo problem, but that problem is simply the loss of citizenship. If the Igbo people will be allowed citizenship in Nigeria, separatist agitations will disappear. We are all, as a collective, to blame for where we are. There are no saints and there are no sinners. The hegemons of the 50s and early 60s are today's victims because they are lacking in the protection of the law. Yesterday's hegemon is today's victim. Today's hegemon will become tomorrow's victims if citizenship is not quickly restored and the law allowed to rule in Nigeria. As I have said, I will offend, but it's not because I do not love you all. It is simply because the truth has to be told if we must heal. Nigeria's problem can be easily cured with citizenship and the rule of law. Osun election showed you that. And Osun election should also show you that the problem is about class. It has very little to do with ethnicity. Father Nosi wasn't talking to Iyachukudi. He was speaking to fellow Yorubas, fellow Ijeshas. Those were the persons to whom Father Nosi was talking. If he had mentioned Chukuma, or Izuchuku, or Osita, or Chinyeri, you would have talked about ethnic bigotry in pursuit of power. There was no ethnicity other than the Yoruba involved in Osun State. This is a lesson of Nigeria. The Igbo problem is the absence of citizenship. Next week, I'll be coming on to Yoruba land. I may even decide to deliver that lecture in Yoruba so that I'll piss off a few more people. But then, have you a blessed week. Congratulations to the governor of Osun State. I can't say congratulations to the people of Osun State just yet. When he has done well, we will congratulate the people. But the voice of the people counted for something this time around. And that should tell the Nigerian opposition, organize, mobilize the people. Evil blinks when the people are determined for change. Have a blessed week, everyone. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
That is Dele Farotimi, undisputable. The man goes to as in he tells the undiluted truth about Nigerian situation, whether you like it or not, consign him. He has spoken, he has spoken. And after saying these things, I know he will be free inside his mind, not like other die-hard people that face that this thing will continue forever. Let me tell us what we are experiencing now. It will not last forever. Very soon, everything is going to be sorted out. God has remembered this country. And we will not leave it for God alone. The people involved, we must get involved in what is affecting our lives. We must get involved. One thing that is killing Nigeria is tribalism. You feel that, okay, Igbos, let's chase them, let's kill them, let's do this thing. Invariably, it will still come back to you in other ways. Check them now, check them what people that have supported bad things, the tribe and the regions that supported harm against another region. What is happening to them now? They are crying, begging on the people that they even killed to come and help them, that they are in trouble. Is that the type of Nigeria you want? Well, I believe that very soon things are going to be sorted out. Yes. Having said this, we are going to look into the threats coming to P2B. They have been threatening P2B. The target is on P2B. Let me not just put threats to P2B. They are targeting P2B. Everything P2B does, they go there and block it. What kind of country are we? This time around, it's not like 2023. People are going to defend their votes and defend it properly. It will not be like before. Even though if you ask me, I'll tell you from the report I've gotten that so many Igbo people don't even want P2B to go there. They are not even interested in the project, Nigeria. Well, let's watch this update.
Do not allow P2B to campaign in any state. That's the instruction coming from Abuja. Do not allow P2B or NDC to campaign in any state, especially Lagos, Rivers, and Anambra states. These three states. The instruction was given. It's not long. They gave the instruction. Let me not put time on it because I'm just receiving it now. Now it's not up to. I won't say anything about that anymore. But that's what is happening now. That is exactly why I said I should bring it to you. And at the same time, let's be clear. You see, this election, is not our normal election. I want to talk to NDC, Obedient, and Peter Obi himself. You see, this election that is coming, especially this campaign that is coming on the 19th, is not normal campaign. We should match the madness for madness if we want to win this election. I've said this before and I'm repeating it again. This is not the time we'll say, leave them now, leave them. No, we are not leaving anything. We are all Nigerians. And nobody have the monopoly of madness. I've said this many times. How can anybody give instruction for Peter Obi not to campaign in any state in Nigeria? Any state, including Anambra State, where he comes from. And everywhere is peaceful. He say, when Peter Obi will go to Anambra State to campaign, no venue will be assigned to him. Security will make sure that he will not campaign in Anambra and in every state in Nigeria. Every state, including Abuja. That is not going to happen. And let nobody tell me that, no, we should not match the madness to match. We will match the madness to madness. Anything they bring, we will bring double. Anything they bring, NDC, Obedient, and Kwankwas, we will bring that double to them. And they will see, say, no be only them they craze. You get some people who get madness, but just package and keep somewhere. You cannot beat a child and tell the child not to cry. You cannot push somebody and at the same time tell the person where to fall. No, now, Nigeria belongs to everybody. Nigeria belongs to everybody, and nobody, when I mean nobody, should wake up one morning and say, no, Obi should not campaign in any of the states. Who give away? Which win should not chop? No, now you guys need to tell me the kind winch wanna shop. Won't go make una tell. You see, you get waiting that they tell wife say me don't tell your husband. No be when you tell and say you want kill her. You go tell your husband. You see this one now. If you are an Obi supporter, if you are an Obedient, if you are a Kwankwasia, if you love Nigeria, this is the time to rise. Independent is not gotten on a platter. The countries that got independence on a platter, like Nigeria, they are suffering till tomorrow. Independence is not gotten on a platter. You need to fight for it. You need to fight for independence. Nigeria is independent, but we are still dependent. How can one man be manipulating a whole country like Nigeria? One person. And people are going about their normal duty as if nothing is happening. Now, winch. No, now, you get some areas, you get some things where there are some things that will be happening, and I'll be asking myself, is there nobody in Nigeria again? Is there nothing we can do? Why are we afraid? Why are we afraid of facing the future? Why are we afraid of saying no to this rascality? Why are we afraid of speaking out? What is going on? What is going on? Campaign is starting and instruction have been given already. As a matter of fact, in Rivers State, NDC members were attacked. Remember, I told us about guarding that office, guarding the Obedient office too. Today, NDC members were attacked. Seriously. In fact, if this thing is allowed to slide, if this madness is allowed to slide, I'm sorry for Nigeria, honestly. I'm sorry. MC Oluom, all of them are gearing up to make sure that nobody will campaign in Lagos. Nobody will campaign in Lagos. The same system they used the other time is the same system they are going to use again this time. But please, if you love Nigeria, there are some times you have to, you have to get to their level to fight them. Of course, forget about education, forget about your wealth, forget about anything. You get to their level and fight them. Dirty. If they want dirty, you give them dirty. Anything they want, you give them. And they will run away. Just the way they did them in Osho. Yes, now, there are some times you don't even need to talk. You don't need to talk. Action. And all of them will run away because they are a bunch of cowards. From their boss to the last person, all of them are cowards. So when they see action, all of them will run away. So I'm telling us to get ready because this campaign is going to be war. And this war we will fight to the end to rescue our nation, to rescue Nigeria, because Nigeria is almost at the brink of abyss. Unfortunately, the people who call our statesmen are all quiet. The people who say these guys are principled, all of them are a bunch of nobodies. So the future belongs to the youths. If you believe that those people you see in Abuja, those people you see in your states as governors or are going to rescue your country, you are wasting your time because they are not ready. As you can see, all of them have already tilted towards Tinubu. So anybody that is supporting Tinubu does not mean well for Nigerians, whoever you are. Anybody that is supporting APC and Tinubu is an enemy of Nigeria. A very great enemy of Nigeria and should not be allowed to come back. Whether you are a governor, whoever you are, must not be allowed to come back again to that seat. Nigerians, you need to wake up. The annoying part is stopping Peter Obi from campaigning in all the states including Anambra. No, this is not going to happen. This is the height of it. My name is Hyacinth and this is the Hyacinth Network. Thanks for listening to me. Please be prepared. Be prepared. Be prepared. Be prepared, I say again. May God bless you. May God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Well, if Nigerians like 2027, let them throw it away the way they throw 2023. Because all indication shows that Peter Obi won that 2023 election. Somebody that won in the Federal Capital Territory, the capital of Nigeria, won in the first capital of Nigeria. If you like, not be Peter Obi go come they defend. Now, Peter Obi has only one vote. Peter Obi has only one vote. Now people will get plenty votes that will come and defend their votes. You don't expect Peter Obi to be in front of defending one vote. Other plenty people are more than Peter Obi. Let us not. Well, that is by the way. Now, let's go into the main discussion. The discussion now is about Dave Umahi. Dave Umahi, I don't know who gave him the support that he is telling Igbos not to vote Peter Obi. If there are 100 people here, Dave stand, Peter Obi stand, I know that the 100 people will vote for Peter Obi. Even after sharing them dollars, they will still vote for Peter Obi. Well, let's hear what Hyacinth has to say in that regards.
I just want to talk about Umahi. You get the area, you get the time where somebody go begin misbehave rich. People need to call him to order. I said that I will not talk about Kenneth Okonkwo or Dave Umahi again because they are irrelevant, very much irrelevant. in the scheme of things. But when Peter Obi is mentioned, I will be out. Yeah, I will talk. Hey, I no go hide. I will talk. You see, madness. I always tell people madness. Nobody have monopoly of madness. Nobody. I guess some people will arrange their own, keep them by the side, say, I don't want to be seen as such person. But Dave Umahi obsession about Peter Obi is getting out of hand and need to be called to order. He said, Igbo people will not vote for Obi as long as I'm concerned. Igbo people's vote is for Ahmed Tinubu. I will make sure that happened. I will make sure that happens, I mean. The people of Igbo land will not vote for Peter Obi. Dave Umahi, who are you? Who are you to decide the fate of the entire Igbo land? Who are you to say that people will not vote for Peter Obi? Do you really know what you are talking about? I don't think so. So that is why I said, when mad people believe that they have the monopoly of madness, some people need to tell them that, don't worry, I still have mine, but I decided not to bring it out. Dave Umahi, I want to tell you one thing about Peter Obi. You are a classless individual and you are a poor man. Peter Obi is a multi-millionaire and never made money from politics. Apart from politics, you are a dirty idiot. All you did in Ebonyi State is now, your airport is now converted to church. All the roads you constructed in Ebonyi State, all of them are dead traps now. You don't compare yourself to Peter Obi. Igbo people know better. I'm not here to insult you. I'm not here to state the fact that until you stop calling Peter Obi, until you stop disrespecting him, I'm not telling you not to support your maniac. I'm not saying you shouldn't support whoever you want to support. But I'm telling you that you shouldn't mention Peter Obi's name. 1, you guys are not equals. 2, you guys can never be equal. 3, you should go to your APC and campaign for your principle and stop mentioning the name of Peter Obi. Okay, let's start. Peter Obi saved money for Anambra State. How much did you save for Ebonyi State? Peter Obi's money, the money he saved runs into millions of dollars and in naira. How much did you save? You are collecting life pension and you have a house in Abuja, land and everything. You also have one and some in Ebonyi State. Peter Obi don't have any. Peter Obi only have a house in Onitsha where he lives. Nobody have ever died in Peter Obi's residence. Nobody. Peter Obi has never taken somebody from Abuja to Ebonyi State for the person to go and die. No. But every time we hear one person died, 5 engineers died, and the other person died in your home. And because of who you are, you suppress judgment. And based on the judicial system we have in Nigeria, everything goes. In some crime, you will be in prison. In some crime, by now you will rot in jail. You will not even come outside to talk again, because you should be ashamed of yourself. You should be ashamed of yourself. In fact, your children, your wife, all of them should be ashamed of themselves. You are not qualified to be called a dad or a father. You disgrace yourself every now and then And all you try to make up with is just to mention Peter Obi's name. Peter Obi can never win a vote in Igbo land. Peter Obi is this, Peter Obi is that. When you come for Peter Obi, come for us. Anytime you mention Peter Obi's name, I will make sure that I run you down. I don't care what anybody say. Be careful the way you live. Be careful the way you insult Peter Obi. Because this time around, we are going to match you guys madness for madness. You saw what happened in Osun State. That one a preamble. What happened in Osun State? That one they learn for what will happen to you guys if you guys try to rig. Because that's where your power lies. You've been rejected everywhere. You saw what happened in the north. Yes, your principle. People, they were not even there to campaign for Tinubu. They just went there wearing APC t-shirt and all that other to go and campaign for themselves. Because he's told now, they nearly lynched them. APC have been rejected. And you have been rejected in Igbo land already. The only person from APC that people sometimes look at is Hope Uzodimma. You know why? Hope Uzodimma made his money before he joined politics. I know Hope Uzodimma when he was working with Charles Orie. I know them. When they were doing their 419 and everything. He thinks I know I go hide them. He was a 419er. Yes, now with Charles Orie. All of them, they were with what is this guy's name? I will remember his name. So most of them, they were with this 419 group. Yeah, they were doing their stuff before they joined politics. I know them. Know most of them. So even when the way he made his money is still Kurugere movement, but he didn't make his money through politics. Who know you? You were just there running things in Port Harcourt, receiving your salary before somebody called you to come and be his deputy governor. And from there, and because you never expected to be rich. Yes, now, you never expected to be rich. You are just a pauper receiving salary in Port Harcourt. Now, you've seen the light of Tifree through your principle. And you cannot rest. All you do is, each time you have the microphone to talk, Peter Obi can never win a vote in Igbo land. Peter Obi is this, Peter Obi is that. Be careful. Be careful. Anyway, I don't even need to warn you again because you guys are going out in 2027. Wallahi. In 2027, all of you will be history. All of you will be history. And many of you will be in jail. Quote me. Today is the 19th of August, 2026. Many of you will be in jail after 2027 election. When I go hear them, like I will always say, when I go hear this cause, no be jokes. So be careful how you mention Peter Obi's name. Stop insulting the integrity of Igbo people. Stop insulting Igbo land. They are a nation blessed by God. Forget what Nigerians are doing to them. You shouldn't. Stop insulting Igbo people. They will pay you back in 2027. You and Soludo and all the rest of you. When I go hear this calls. My name is Hyacinth, and this is the Hyacinth Network. Thank you for joining me.
Alright, viewers, I thank you for coming along with me. Please, if you have not subscribed to YangaLife channel, click on the subscription button, notification bell, like our videos. Let's hear what you think about this video, because things are happening in Nigeria today. And our destiny is on our hands. We will not allow this to slip by again. How many times something will do us before we learn? That is a very big question mark. Well, I am still Chinedu till I come your way next time.